to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and today I'm going to be playing another game using the Men of Would-Be Kings and my French Foreign Legion and Berber collection. I've got quite a lot of units out on the table today, and I've made up a scenario because it didn't quite fit any of the scenarios from the book. So I've called this Man the Ramparts, so it's based on those classic black and white movies where of course they're defending some lonely outpost in the middle of nowhere surrounded by the enemy. So what we have are some Berbers along all three sides of the table and a fort over here. I'll show you the photograph in a moment. And essentially the game's going to last 8 turns, and the Berbers are going to try and get a footing inside the fort. There is a breach already in the wall, so it's not as impossible as it sounds. In terms of points, French Foreign Legion forces 28 points. Facing them are 48 points worth of Berbers. But I'll run through the army lists in a moment. Essentially, the Foreign Legion must defend the fort. They say they're not going to come outside the fort, so their deployment zone is inside the fort, and the Berbers can deploy anywhere up to 6 inches on the other 3 sides of the table. So they're roughly equidistant in any direction from the walls of the fort. There is some cover, there's some hard cover dotted around, a bit of soft cover, some hills which would represent some hard cover. Most of the Berber units are sword armed, although of course they do have some a scattering of muskets, so they can have very weak fire if the warrior units decided they were going to go into firing. But there are some rifle or musket wielding Berber units on the table, 4 in fact. So we'll see how it goes. So as mentioned, I've written up a scenario. So essentially what we've got here, as I say, is a 28 point Foreign Legion force, which is going to consist of the commanding officer, Captain Danjou. He is in charge of 2 full strength regular infantry, Foreign Legion units, and a half strength one, worth half the points obviously, but also a couple of units of tirailleurs, recently painted, had to get them on the table. So I say that total comes to 28 points. On the Berber side we have Al Hassim, who's appeared in some previous games. He's here again, but this time he's coming with Arik Hattar, which is his second in command, who will be in charge of the infantry, if you like, on the field. Most of the Berber forces are infantry this time. We have 3 units of musket wielding tribal irregulars, and tribal infantry. We've got 5 units of tribal infantry, so there's a lot of figures on the table, but we've also got some rifle wielding horse as well, so they're very fast around the table. I say the Berber force is 48 points, so they do significantly outnumber the defenders. Now, for the purposes of assault in the walls, I'm going to allow the rule that I tested in my last game, so that if multiple units go in simultaneously, they can roll as one group. So you take all those figures into account. So it gives the Berbers a bit of an advantage if they can gang up, but that's assuming, of course, they can all reach the walls in one go. However, because the walls are high, some of these units will be carrying ladders, but nonetheless, when they reach the walls, if they're going to fight it, now normally in melee you take the category of terrain and drop it down a level in terms of how many extra casualties you need to score. So for instance, soft cover just doesn't count in melee, so if you roll 5 hits, that's 5 kills against infantry. But for hard cover, you drop it down a level, instead of having to take 2 extra hits to hit that. So in other words, a total of 3 to kill a man who's in hard cover. In melee, that would drop down to 2. However, because the walls are high, I'm going to give them that +1 back. So in other words, it's going to take 3 hits to kill 1 defender. If they're gonna fight their way up over the walls, because they're going to have to put ladders and throw grappling hooks and all the rest. So a much tougher task. However, there is a breach. If they attack where the breach is, that will just be treated as regular hard cover in a melee. So in other words, they just have to do 1 extra casualty, so 2 per kill, to get through that breach. The Foreign Legion, on their side, do have some spare troops, and they can even put them up on the walls or use them to defend that breach. But we will see how that goes. It depends as the game plays on. I'm keeping a rule from one of the earlier games, which is melting away. So any Berber units that take part in the fight and either cause casualties or receive casualties, so in other words they've played an active role in the game, will be able to melt away, so they can retreat and exit the table, and they get the bragging rights for having taken part. So I will give them 1 victory point for any units that melt away. But obviously the real choice victory points, the extra points, are there for them being able to get onto the ramparts or even inside the fort. They will get 6 points if any Berber unit or part of it is contesting control of the fort at the end of turn 8. The Berbers will also get 1 point for every enemy unit, every enemy leader they kill, and 1 point for every friendly unit. 1 point for every friendly unit melts away, and 2 points for every enemy unit destroyed or broken. In terms of the French forces, obviously they ain't going to flee anywhere because they're trapped inside the fort. But what I'm going to say is, if a unit breaks, and you would normally remove it from play, I will remove the unit from play, and the men are considered to have run off and are hiding somewhere, hoping that no one finds them. So they're out of the game effectively. So that's it for now. I'm going to crack on with the game. As before, I'm going to give you the highlights as I play, and then perhaps focus in on a couple of the crucial moments. So now I've talked far too long, I'm going to give you a quick view of the table. So over in Fort Arid we have the French Foreign Legion and some units of tirailleurs. There are 2 full-size units of the French Foreign Legion and a half-size unit, all under command of individual officers, with their commanding officer as an extra base as well. And then 2 units of tirailleurs, all manning the battlements. The unit that you see along the back are facing in the wrong direction, because of course the fort could be surrounded and there may be more attacks going on the other side of the fort. I will allow up to half of that unit to detach to work elsewhere within the fort, so long as there's a commander, an officer and some men on that back wall. That is the minute that they have to maintain that, because there may be some enemy coming from the other direction. However, if, for instance, the Berbers got inside the fort, I will allow those men to turn around and shoot down into the courtyard, for instance. But otherwise, they have to remain on that back wall, and could potentially play no part in the game. Then you've got the Berbers themselves. So up here on the heights, we have a unit of sharpshooters, and then we have horse under the direct command of Halal Hussein himself. They're rifle armed, so they're quite nasty. We have some more sharpshooters here, the Bakata sharpshooters, and then some tribal troops. So we have the Karaji warriors, the Agar warriors, the Ashar warriors, the Banuli warriors, and the Al Bay warriors. They're all under the direct command of Arak Hatar. He's the second in command to Alal Hussein, and he will be down there. So that in that respect, the Berbers have a little bit of an advantage, because they have 2 officers that they can use to control their forces and add dice to those units. And then lastly, we have another unit of sharpshooters over here, ready to take advantage of the rough terrain on the edge. There is some soft cover here in the centre. These areas will be counted as hard cover. The hills will be counted as hard cover. So I'm about to start turn 2, and last turn the Berbers started to surge forward. All of the warriors you see here moved forward. Obviously they can't fire while they're moving, but they're obviously aimed with the sole intent of hitting that wall. The sharpshooters here are moving into a position where next turn they'll be in hard cover. The sharpshooters on the far side managed to get into hard cover immediately and took a casualty from fire from the Tiralia, so that they've done their work. But this unit here, the Argyle Warriors, lost 3 men, passed their pinning test, but they lost 3 men to fire from the walls, from the Foreign Legion guys on the walls. Meanwhile, inside the fort, the Foreign Legion have Captain Renoir, Captain Renoir has gone up and detached off some men from the unit section 1 that was along the back wall, so leaving a skeleton force of men to defend that rear wall. Yeah, presumably there's some firing going on over there, so he's detached off 6 men to bring round to the front, because he decided that the main attack is from here, obviously. And in the meantime, Lieutenant Verneuil has moved his half section into a position where it can guard the breach in the wall, because obviously, again, a weak point that they know that they've got to defend. So not really a lot's happened. No points obviously scored this turn. No leaders were killed. You know, the Berbers very much getting into position to prepare for an assault here at the front. Okay, it's turn 3 and the Berbers begin to charge into towards the fort. Now there's several of my house rules that have come into play. This unit had been pinned. I allow units to test for pinning. If they pass, you remove the pin marker and the unit can act as normal. It's that moment of hesitation that gets swept away because the commander can push his men. You know, if it had failed, then he'd had all the normal disadvantages of failing because the unit falters and they don't listen to him. But I don't feel like there's need for the unit to be pinned and sat around doing absolutely nothing for a turn. It doesn't feel right to me, so that's how I've done it. So this unit was able to remove its pin marker, and then it decides it's going to go attack at the double. He's not only managed to whip his men up, but he's convinced them to charge in. I've rolled the extra dice to see how much extra movement they got, and I rolled a 2, so that means they could do a total of 10. But I had to move just over 8 inches to reach the walls. So that means they've charged more than half of their move distance. Their 10 is this turn, for this turn. So they've charged more than the 5 inches, which means I'm going to give the defenders, which is actually the demi-section inside the fort, because they're not attacking, they're not trying to climb over the walls, they're aiming straight for that gap. So the defenders of that gap are actually the unit that's inside. The defenders are going to get +2 dice for defending, because the enemy's charged more than half their move to reach that point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the Foreign Legionaries win. I'm going to remove some men. 1, 2, 3. Oh no, he's the leader. 3, 4. See if it's roll to see if it's the leader. No, so I'll just take off a regular guy. So that's 5 kills. Those men can all come off. 2 of the legionaries come off, and I'll put the other guy that I've just knocked off the battlements. He falls off the battlements. He's come back up, so that unit now has to fall back 4 inches, and it has to take a pinning test. -1 penalty per men lost, which was 5, and another 1 because the unit is now below half strength, so -6 to this roll. Oh, and they rolled high. Take the 6 off, you're left with 5. The leadership of the unit is 5. That, amazingly, that unit is not pinned. Now the Argyle Warriors have actually charged up to the wall. They've got some ladders with them and probably some grappling hooks and so on as well. So they've charged, they're going to have a harder fight. For the Foreign Legionaries, they're going to get 6 dice for their men, 2 dice for Captain Renoir because he brings 2 dice to the fight, and another 2 dice as a defence bonus because again the Argyle warriors moved more than half of their potential move to reach the wall. Meanwhile, for the Berbers themselves, they are going to get 13 dice for their men and 1 for their leader. Berbers first, and they hit on a 4+. Again, they are fierce. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. They're only going to do 1 hit. If they had just had 1 more dice, they've done 1 hit. The Foreign Legionaries in return. Now they are going to fight. This is another thing I need to say, is this demi-section was taken from Section 1 over there. So they are going to use the same stats as Section 1. So they are just elite. They're not fierce, unlike the unit next to them. So they are going to fight on a 5+. 5+. But as I said earlier, they are going to get 1 hit per kill because they are defending. So roll for them. Oh, nasty. Okay. 5 in total. 5 men come off. Roll to see if the unit is pinned after it's thrown back. So it's going to be -5. The unit is now down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's at half strength. So I won't give them that penalty because they normally start with 16. So they're going to basically have a -5 to this roll. Yeah, definitely they're going to be pinned when they get pushed back. And this unit is going to get forced back half a move, 4 inches, which is, they've just about got enough room to fit like that, basically. So that's the Argyle warriors. They were pinned. So I'll put that pinned marker down to show that. So they're going to have to roll to see if they can do anything next turn. So I'm ready to start turn 4, and towards the end of turn 3, the Foreign Legion here gave off a hail of fire that was incredibly accurate. The Asher warriors took 5 casualties. Amazingly, they passed their pin test, but they're now down to 1 warrior and his leader. If that warrior goes, I will remove the leader as well, because the warriors in my adaptation of the rules are, the leaders are additional to the normal sized unit. So if the rest of the unit is gone, the leader is removed. So they're very precarious. Equally, the Argyle warriors took 5 casualties as well, but they failed their pin test. So they now have 2 pin markers. So when it comes to doing the rally check for them, which I'll be doing in a moment, they're going to get -2 off because they're below 25% strength, and another -2 because they're pinned. If, amazingly, they don't end up being removed from the table, I will try and pull them back to see if I can get them to melt away off the edge of the table, because then they can claim some points for having taken part in the fighting. They get bragging rights for having taken part. So melting away is still an option for those units, but they're pretty much useless for anything else. Okay, so it's the beginning of turn 4, and these 2 units are going to have to make rally tests to see if they break or whether they can do any actions this turn. So I'm going to start with the Asher warriors. They've got a discipline of +1, but they've take a point off of the rally roll for being pinned, and a -2 because they're below 25% strength. So overall a net -2 on this roll, and they need to get 5 to reach 5 or more. So we roll for them there, and -2 brings it down to exactly 5. So they get to take that pin marker off, and they will get to act this turn. The Argyle warriors, however, have 2 pinned markers. Again, they're below 25% strength, so they're going to have a net -3 because their discipline is +1, a net -3 to this roll. Let's see if they can pass as well. Oh no. So -3 brings it down to a 1, and if the adjusted total is 2 or less, the unit routs and is removed from the game. So that's points for the French Foreign Legion because they've managed to destroy a unit. But more importantly, there's a pin test for all friendly units within 12 inches. So basically, from where they were, 12 inches actually it's all of those, and it would have been, yep, those and those. So pretty much all barring the rifleman on the extreme flanks, everything else on the table was going to have to take a pin test. So the routed unit that was there comes off, and everything within 12 inches has to take a test. And it was this one, but they unsurprisingly passed. It hasn't taken any casualties, and it has its great leader with it. More worryingly, the Karaji warriors have just taken a pin test and failed, so they've received a pin marker, and the Bakata sharpshooters have taken a pin test and failed. Now that's not so much of a worry because they weren't planning on moving and they've just been providing covering fire, but nonetheless they failed. However, thankfully the remaining units over here, the two warrior units that also had to check because they were within 12 inches, both passed comfortably. So not great, because one of the units that was obviously about to go charging in is now going to have to do a rally test at the beginning of the turn. Actually, it's worse than that. This unit isn't going to be able to do a rally test until the beginning of its next turn, so it's not going to be able to do anything, and this is at the beginning of the phase. So there you go, I did that wrong. I should have done the rally test for these two units last. That's something to bear in mind for future games, because this unit now doesn't get to take its action because it's pinned and won't get a chance to rally until the beginning of turn 5. So that could be a crucial mistake as far as the Berbers are concerned. Completely unconscious error on my part, no bias intended, but nonetheless it could be crucial for the Berbers. So the game gets spicy very quickly, because despite the fact that the Karaji warriors have been pinned and here can't be joined in, two other warrior units, undamaged so far, have both managed to reach the walls. So you have a full strength unit of the Albay warriors have managed to aim for the gap, and the Bernoulli warriors are aiming for the wall using ladders and so on to fight their way over. They have the tougher job, but nonetheless it's still going to be tight over here. So the Bernoulli, the Albay warriors are going to get 16 dice for their men, plus 1 for their leader, and they are fighting against hard cover. So you reduce that by 1. So basically, they're going to need 2 kills, 2 hits per kill with their dice. Meanwhile, the defenders are going to get 4 for the men inside, 1 for their leader, and 2 because the Albay warriors charged more than half their move to reach the gap. And they only need 1 hit per kill because they're the defenders. So I think I'm going to do the Foreign Legion first, just to see. No, I'm going to do it the other way round. Let's go on, let's see how the tribal men do first. And as I said, they're going to need 2 hits per kill. Well, on the face of it, that doesn't look too bad. So that's 2, 3 kills. That's it, 3. And I hadn't rolled for the leader, but it doesn't matter anyway. He can't make another 2 hits. So the Albay warriors have managed to do 3 kills. So I'll just leave 3 white dice out to show that they killed 3. And then it's the Foreign Legion, as I say. 4 for the men, 1 for the commander, and 2 extra dice because the Albay warriors charged in. That's one of my own house rules. Charged in more than half their move. And they only need 1 hit per kill, and they need 4 plus. Oh my dear. Well, there you go. 6. The defenders, again, with just a handful of men, managed to repulse the warriors. However, it is starting to look bad on the inside there. I'm going to just roll to see if it's the commander of the Foreign Legion troops inside. No. So I'm going to take 3 men out of those defenders. Basically, that leaves 1 man and his officer standing there trying to defend the breach. I'm probably going to need to reinforce them somehow at some point. Meanwhile, I've got to take 6 men off of that particular unit. roll to see if it's the leader of the team. No, it isn't. So I've got to take 6 men off. So I'm going to take those 4 and those 2. And that unit will be pushed back half a move. So basically to about there. I'll put the leader in the back. So not good for them, and they don't need to take a pin test because it's been thrown back in melee, but nonetheless that's still not good. They've taken some significant casualties there. However, they might be able to go back in next turn, so we'll have to see what happens. Meanwhile, the Bernoulli warriors are going to charge in. So they as well have 16 dice, because they're an undamaged unit, plus they're going to have an officer. And this time though, unfortunately, they are fighting up against the walls, so they're going to need 3 hits to kill, because it's hardcover, so that's 1 more kill, 1 more hit needed for a kill. But because of the height, I'm adding an extra 1. So they're going to need 3 hits to get a kill. So let's see how they do first, and then we'll work out the Foreign Legion. Now in this case, the Foreign Legion have got more men on the walls, so they should be able to be repulsed fairly easily. But you never know, the dice gods can be fickle. So let's see what happens. Right, so we have 1, 2, 4. That is going to be, well, there's only, oh hang on, no, they're going to hit on a 4+, so that's a hit. That's it out of those dice, I'm afraid. So they managed to do 6 hits, which is 2 kills against the defenders. So not too bad. Not great, but not too bad. So I'll put 2 white dice there to show that they've been hit, the Foreign Legion have been hit. But facing them, there are going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 defenders and a senior officer, and they are going to be hitting on a 5+. 1, 2, and that's it, a draw. Well, the Foreign Legion should be happy with that. They at least managed to push them back. So in a draw, the attacking unit retreats half a move and doesn't take a pin test. So he's going to be back here. Actually, I got that wrong. He should have taken a pin test after all. I'm going to take 2 men off of that unit. 2 men off the walls. Man there and a man there. Just going to do the pin test for this unit over here, the Albay Warriors. I should have done that earlier. 6 plus its discipline 7, but minus the casualties is going to be a foul, so they actually take a pin marker. So not great. Well, that might have been the last roll of the dice, but we'll see, because there's still an undamaged unit over here. So if they can rally and the Foreign Legion and the Berbers get in again next turn, they may have 1 more turn to see if they can breach the walls of the fort. We'll have to see. Now for this game, I've been introducing a couple of new house rules that I wanted to try out specifically for this type of scenario. And one you saw earlier when I broke off a demi-section from the unit that's at the back of the fort, so half the men, because there was a spare officer to go with them. They've been reduced to 1 man and his officer at the moment, so that's rather dangerous down there, defending the breach. However, I've also done a couple of tirailleurs went up in the tower, and because they're so far separated from the rest of the unit, I'm letting them act independently. I'm going to assume that one of the men is an NCO or something like that. So they are able to, on the whole, they can choose to fire with the rest of the unit if they wish, or they can fire independently because they are in effectively a separate fire unit, fire team of their own. They are too far removed to be say that they're part of the rest of the unit. So anyone in the tower basically can fire independently. Everyone in the tower has to fire at the same target, but they can choose to fire at a different target to the rest of the section. So it's the Foreign Legion's turn, or the defender's turn, and bearing in mind that earlier ruling, in theory I could allow the two guys in the tower to take a pot shot down here at these two warriors as they're fleeing, because from a gamey point of view, I know that if I destroyed that unit, the Foreign Legion would pick up a couple of points for destroying a unit and deny the Berbers the chance of getting a point for a unit that melts away. But it is gamey, and the reality is the real threat is in front of the walls, so I'm not going to allow that. So a little bit of a tweak to that little house rule. They can fire independently of the rest of their section, and they can choose a different target to the rest of their section, but they still have to do some sort of priority firing. Yes, they've got a nice clear field of view up there in the tower, but it's just too gamey to let them pick off these men just for the points. That's not what would happen. So they're going to be targeting down here, those two guys. They'll add their fire to the fire down here. Again, I'm going to allow the Foreign Legion to split their fire by demi-section, so half of a unit, because on a wall it's just too inflexible. Of course, it means that they're firing with less dice. That may not necessarily pay off for them, but we'll give it a try and see how that works. So the two tirailleurs in the tower, they haven't got an officer with them, so it's just a straight dice roll. They need 5 or more. The enemy's in the open. No hits from them. Then we have a demi-section here, 6 men surrounding the breach but up on the walls. Again, they're not commanded by an officer because the rest of their section has got the officer. So that's just going to be 6 dice. And they need 5s or more to hit. And again, their a target is in the open, so it's just straight hits. 1 hit per kill. Ooh. 3. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave those 3 there to mark that that unit has taken 3 hits. Actually, nobody else is going to be targeting it, so take 3 men off. Actually, roll to see if one of them's leader. No, so it is 3 men coming off. And then I've got to roll. So their discipline is +1. They've taken 3 casualties, so there's a net -2 on this roll when they've got to get 6+ to see if they're pinned. And they rolled a 6, a -2, it's 4. So they have a second pinned marker, which is not good for them, not good at all. Now, the remaining demi-section is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men and an officer. So there you go, 5 men. Black dice represents the officer. Again, straight rolls, 5 or more, but this time their target is the Bernoulli warriors. 1 hit only, but then saying that, 1 is all it takes. Double 1 to see if it's, no, it's not the leader, so it's just a regular man off. But now we need to roll to see if that unit is pinned. So +1 discipline, -1 for the casualty. They're above half strength, so it's a straight roll. 2d6, got to beat a 6. Got an 11 there, so that's fine. They're not pinned by that. However, they now have the second demi-section, which is 3 men and Captain Renoir, who's actually adds 2 dice. So that's going to be a total of 5 dice. But again, hitting on a 5+, target in the open. Oh, that dice rolled over there, so that's 3 hits. Captain Renoir was particularly accurate with his pistol today, as both of his dice hit. So let's just test to see if the enemy commander's killed. No. So it's 3 hits off that unit. And they've got to take another pin test. -3 for the casualties, +1 for the discipline, so net -2. They've got to beat a 6. Oh, no. So that unit is pinned as well. I'll move the leader of that unit into that hex. I might as well move that dice, that man into there. Get rid of the movement base. So that unit has been pinned as well by the defenders' fire. So now, I don't know if you can see this here, let's move this around. All 3 attacking units are pinned, are going to have to test at the beginning of the next turn to see if they can do anything. But equally, we have 2 rifle units on either flank that have also been pinned this turn. So you can tell the amount of fire that's been pouring out of the fort. Now I'm just going to quickly wrap up the rest of the fire from the rest of the units that's in there. Oh, by the way, I didn't allow the defenders, the demi-section inside the courtyard, to fire through the gap. I decided that this unit is too far away. You know, when they were really close, I might have allowed one man to shoot through the gap. But the reality is they're in the courtyard, not in the buildings, defending that breach. So I decided I wasn't going to let them shoot. That would have been a bit unfair. An extra couple of dice. As we could see, the defenders had plenty of advantages in terms of firepower as it was, without adding an extra couple of dice. So now I'm going to quickly wrap up the rest of the fire. So I've got the 2 Tirailleur units, or what's left of them, because they both got to take rally tests because they've got pin markers, and then providing everything's okay, they will fire on the 2 flanking units. But we'll see how that goes first. So, crucial rally test for this unit. They've got 2 pin markers and their discipline is 0. So there's going to be a net -2 to this roll when they need a 6. Well, they rolled a 7. -2 is 5. So they failed. That's not going to be good. So they failed, but they're above 2. So the unit remains pinned and retreats half a move. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to mean they're going to have to move away from the wall, because they can't move and drop off the edge of the cliff. But what will happen is they'll have to take a whole move to get back up to the wall if they manage to pass their next rally test. So that marks them pulled back. So it remains pinned. We're going to have to test again. And then if they unpin, they'll be able to move up to the wall, but of course then they wouldn't be able to shoot. Then over on the far wall, the other unit is also going to have to make a pin test. I'll roll it over here. Again, -1 for a pinned marker, 0 for discipline, so -1 net to this, and they need a 6 as well. And they rolled a 6, -1 is 5, so they have to fall back as well, so not good. So it's the start of turn 5 and the Berbers have several rally tests to make. This could be crucial for the Berbers, because obviously they don't want to be failing things at this stage in the battle. First off, we have the Bakata sharpshooters. 1 pinned marker, but they're not below 50% strength. So this is going to be just a roll at a -1, and they need 6. They fail. So they are going to remain pinned and they retreat half a move. Which is not great, because that means they're going to be back here basically. They're going to be behind the hard cover. Let's take that stuff off. Means they're not going to be shooting this turn. Keep that pin marker on them. Okay. So then we move round to the Karaji warriors again. This is discipline +1 this time, minus a pinned marker. They're at full strength, so this is a straight roll and they only need a 5+. In fact, actually, come to think of it, yeah, 5+, because that leader's attached. So let's see what they get. Oh yeah, 9, so they pass. So I can take that pin marker off and they'll be able to act as normal. My adaptation of the rules, that is. Then the Banuli warriors, again, +1 discipline, -1 for a pin marker, straight roll, and they need 6s. Yes, that's going to be fine. So they're going to be able to act this turn. And then lastly, not lastly actually, but anyway, the Albay warriors, +1 but -2 for their pin markers, and they're just under half. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yes, they're at half strength. So they're going to get a -1 for being half strength, 2 for the pin markers, but +1 for the discipline, so they're rolling at a +2 and they need, sorry, at a -2 and they need 6. So that was what I rolled, -2 gets a 6, so those pin markers can come off and they're going to get to move. That's crucial for the Berbers because they were in trouble. And then lastly, over here we have the Hassani sharpshooters, 1 pin marker, no discipline bonuses, so they're going to be rolling at a -1 and they need a 6. They pass fine, so they're okay. So those units will be able to act normally this turn. So with the rally checks out the way, it's now time for the Berber units to do something. Now, these guys over here, the sharpshooters over on the edge of the hill on the rough ground, can't see the trawlers now because the trawlers have had to move back away from the wall, and with the angle I'm going to determine that they can't see the Berbers. They're effectively getting full cover, they're out of sight now. When the Berbers return to the wall they'll be able to be seen, but for the time being they can't be seen. And likewise the horse down here can't see anybody up on the walls. They're too far round to be able to get a shot at the front. I'm not going to allow that. The angle is far too steep and the rest of those troops wouldn't be visible. So I may yet move those, but they're going to go after the warriors. So I've just measured, these guys can get straight in, and what they're going to do is they're going to go for this section of wall. They don't need to do an attack, an at the double move. This unit will need to do an at the double move. 4 + 8, 12 inches, more than enough. So they're going to go in. So they're going to go in next to them to support them. And as you recall from previous games, I'm going to let all of these troops basically fight as one big mass. So the 2 Foreign Legion units up on the walls can combine. And likewise the men down here can combine for one big roll. This could be crucial because there's a lot, suddenly the Berbers have managed to get a lot of men around that wall for one last ditch attempt to get over the wall. Meanwhile the Almay warriors are going to keep the defenders on the other side occupied as well. Now they've got a bit of an advantage here because I'm still going to keep this demi section is going to be he's now going to be taking part in all of this. Apart from these 3 guys, they can't really participate in this melee, so I'm afraid they're out of it. They're not really going to get to do anything, and as with previous turns, only the defenders on the ground on the inside are really going to get to take part. So in charges these guys, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them onto a different base just so that they can fit. So they again, they don't need to measure for an at the double because they're within range. So they have a definite advantage in terms of numbers. Whether they can break through that breach or not is another matter. So last ditch attempt possibly for the Berbers to see if they can get in. So as I think we could possibly be reaching a make or break point for this battle, certainly in terms of winning points for getting into the fort, I'm going to do all the dice rolls for this. So the defenders, they're 2 men, so 1 man and an officer. So 1 man, the officer that goes with him gets a dice, and they're going to get 2 because the Almay warriors have charged half or more of their move to reach the wall. So they'd retreated half, so they've covered half to get back. So and plus they've got a little bit more to get through the actual breach itself. So I'm going to let the defenders get the 2 dice bonus for a defensive fire, and facing them is going to be 7 men and their officer, their leader, trying to get through the breach. Difference is they've got to do 2 hits per kill, the defenders 1 hit per kill, and the defenders are hitting on a 4+. So let's do the attackers first. They're hitting on a 5+. 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 2 hits. So I'll move those dice away. I'm going to leave 2 dice there to show that they've got 2 hits against the defenders, and the defenders roll their 4 dice. So they've got 4s and a plus. Oh, 4 hits, the defenders win again. So we're going to take off some figures here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put that leader in there. And we're going to see if any of those hits were the leader. No. Sorry, that was out of shot, but that was not a double one. And they're going to fall back and they're going to have to take a pin test. So let's roll. So they've had 4 off, +1 for discipline, -3 on this roll, 5. No, they're going to take a pin marker as well. So they're going to fall back again. Back here. Take a pin marker. That's the end of them. I think they're not going to be doing much else, I don't think. Then we move to the big fight. Now, I've already pre-calculated this. There is a lot going on here. 26 dice for figures combined in one big scrum of a fight. 2 dice for leaders and a further 2 dice for Arik Hatar, the senior leader present, who's going to join the fight as well. So the Berbers have a lot of dice in this fight, and they hit on a 4+ because they're fierce. Both units of warriors are fierce, hitting on a 4+. For the defenders, they're going to get 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, plus an officer is 12, and 2 for Captain Renoir. So they're going to get 14 dice in reply. The difference is that obviously they've only got to do 1 hit per kill, whereas the defenders have got to do 3 hits per kill because it's hard cover and height. So I'm going to pull the camera back and we do those rolls and we'll see what happens. This may be the point at which the fort is breached, or maybe not. The dice will tell. Let's roll for the Berbers. Loads and loads of dice, hitting on a 4+. So what have we got? We have, looks like quite a few. Another one. All the others are misses. So let's see how many that is. It's going to be 3 dice per kill. So 1, 2, 3, 4 kills for them. Now the defenders, and the defenders are attacking, hitting back on a 5+, but they only need 1 hit per kill. 1, 2, 3, oh, just 4. It's a tie. Wow, that was tight. That was very, very close indeed. But what that means is that defenders managed to keep their position on the walls and the attackers are thrown back. So fortunately these units didn't take any more pinned markers, so they might go back in again, one more try. But crucially, what I've just realised is I hadn't removed the 2 figures for the defenders inside, down that STEMI section that was inside. So the Foreign Legion basically lost a half section and a leader. So although the Berbers aren't going to get a point for destroying an entire unit because the rest of the unit is on that far wall right at the back, they have got a point for a leader because there were 2 hits and only 2 men left, 1 man and his leader. So the Berbers have scored a point for a leader killed. But crucially, there's now no one on the ground defending that breach. So that's something to think about. So what I'm going to do, the only unit is the sharpshooters over on the far side over here managed to kill one of the tirailleurs in the tower because they're the only ones they can see. And the horse here haven't moved yet, so I'm going to move them rather than fire them this turn, so they can provide some fire cover. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to skirmish move them so they get to do a little bit of fire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them half their move, 6 inches. So basically, let's move that over here. 6 inches. I'm going to move them sideways so they sort of swing round. So they're going to move to about here. So now they can see the front. And because they've skirmish moved, well, I ain't going to take them off the base. Can't be bothered with all that mucking around. But it means that half of them can get to shoot. So we're going to have 5 dice for the men, and 1 for the leader, and 2 for Al-Hassimi, firing against the defenders. They're still going to need to score 3 hits per kill, but frankly at this point in the game any hits is important, because if this lot are going to go in again next turn, they need to have some numbers on their side. So let's roll these dice and see how we do. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 hits, but because of the hard cover, that's only going to translate into 1 man killed. So I'll take off that guy in the middle somewhere. So again, roll to see if it's the leader. No. Saw that 1 land. No. Is it Captain Renoir? No, it isn't. Let's just check to see that the unit passes its morale test. It's got to get a 6, but it's got a +2 leadership. Yes, it's going to be fine. So only just, but it is fine. It stays on the wall. So I've given a little bit of thought to it, and actually I'm going to give the Berbers an extra victory point. So they destroyed that demi-section in there, and I said because it's not the whole section, because the other half of their section is up there, I wasn't going to give them the point for destroying the section. But the demi-section broke off on its own with a commander. So I'm going to, instead of letting the Berbers get 2 points for destroying the whole section, I'll let the Berbers have a point for destroying the demi-section. And they get the point for the leader that was with them. So they picked up a couple of points there. Thankfully, the 2 Tirailleur units managed to rally. And what's happened is this unit over here, under D'Elion, has managed to get down into the courtyard, but that's all they can do. They can obviously see that the wall is unmanned. That doesn't mean the Berbers can get inside. Then we'll have to see what happens. Over here on the other wall, this commander has managed to bring, and this should be Lieutenant Van Der, has brought some of his men round, and only the ones that manage to get to the front wall will get to take part in any melee. So basically I've measured for each man. So half the section that's remaining can't make it, so they're still running towards the front, but the lieutenant and 3 of his men have managed to make it to the wall to try and bolster the defences, because the Berbers could very well have another go at those walls, and it's getting to the point now. Definitely the next turn has got to be make or break. I don't think there's any more fighting to be had beyond that. We will see what happens. With the breach unmanned and both warrior units having passed their rally tests and charging really well, they managed to get through the breach and into melee with the Tirailleurs that are still forming up down in the courtyard. And this is crucial because these Tirailleurs aren't great troops. These are just they've got good weapons, but they're not got any special abilities, so they're going to only hit on a 6+, and because they're all in the open, it's going to be 1 hit per kill. So for the Tirailleurs, they're going to get 8 dice plus 1 for their leader, but for the Berbers that manage to get in there, are going to get 9 dice plus 2 leaders. So the Berbers do have an advantage here, and the Berbers are going to be fighting on slightly better dice. So I'm going to have to do these separately in the end, because the two lots of Berbers going in are different quality, so they'll be hitting on slightly different factors. So I'm going to roll for the Tirailleurs first. So they need 6s. Roll well, boys. Well, 2 hits. So the Berbers are going to score 2 hits. Now then, let's work this out. There are 3 Albay warriors and their leader hitting on a 5+. One hit. And then there are 6 Bernoulli warriors and their leader hitting on a 4+. Oh well, there you go. That's sorted that out. They're in. They've managed to get through the gap, and they've attacked and beaten the tirailleurs that are inside. This isn't looking good for the defenders. The Berbers have got a foothold and managed to win a round of melee. I'll try and sort that out in a second. I'll move all the positions and take dice off in a second. But outside we also have another attack at the walls. I'll resolve that in a minute. I'm going to try and sort out what's going on inside the fort first. But this isn't looking good for the defenders. So at the end of the last turn, as many defenders as possible, parts of units, the tirailleurs that were surviving, piled fire into the Berbers that had got into the courtyard. They managed to destroy the Albay warriors, taking their leader with them, and damaged and pinned the remaining units. Got 2 pin markers on it, stabilising the position inside the courtyard a little bit, but of course a lot of attention is now being focused inside and away from the walls. Meanwhile, the men on the walls shoot at the Karaji warriors, doing a few more casualties and pinning those. I think it's now the point where the Berbers are going to be trying to get away and see if they can melt away and get some more points, because they managed to score a few points so far this game. So we'll see whether they can claim a technical victory for the bravery of having got inside the fort perhaps. Let's see what happens. We're now about to start on turn 7. So we're on turn 7, and I decided that the Berbers can't do anything more, and they decide to melt away. These units are all close enough to the edge that on turn 8 they will exit the table, and so and including the unit over here is also, so that's going to be 4 units that melt away. So the Berbers are going to get 4 victory points there just for units that took part and managed to melt away. However, they are going to lose that unit in the middle inside the courtyard, so they're going to lose that, and the Foreign Legion are going to get some victory points for that. And then crucially, the Karaji warriors failed their rally test so badly that they rout, so the Foreign Legion are going to get points for those as well. So that's it, game over. I'm going to quickly add up the points and we'll find out what happened. So before the game started, I did a quick sheet so I could keep a track of whose turn it was, because I knew this was going to take more than one evening for me to play, and I didn't want to come back a couple of days later and forget whose turn it was next, and also to keep track of the various victory points. And you know, the Berbers managed to score some points. They destroyed some units, and they managed to take some points from the Foreign Legion. However, at the end of the day, the Foreign Legion won by a point. That final Berber unit, the Karaji warriors that broke and routed, was enough to give the Foreign Legion 8 points to the Berbers 7. But saying that, the Berbers got inside the fort. They killed a lot of the French invader. I don't think that Al-Hassim is going to take this as a defeat. He's going to be going back and telling his warriors how brave they were and how they taught the French invaders a lesson. So technically I'm going to call it a draw, but in reality I don't think this is anything for the French to be proud of.